is for genuine collaboration between the business community on campus and the engineers present. So very frequently, I'll be sitting in my office about 2 or 3 times per semester, and a couple business students will walk in. You can tell who I am by the presence of the Diet Coke and where it is on the desk. Now, these business students will say that they have a great idea about blank, and that they think there's a lot of business potential in blank, and do I know anything about blank? So I would tell them, why yes, I do know a little bit about blank. There is in fact a lengthy history in the literature about blank. They might look into the Annals of Blank or the New England Journal of Blank. Or perhaps that there is some problem with their idea. It could be that their idea in some manner defies the laws of thermodynamics, which they probably shouldn't do, and they may want to go back to the drawing board. But once in a while, I will see an opportunity to connect these business students with a gifted student in engineering. So this will be a student whose life is about blank, who wants to make their career about blank, and is an extremely rigorous student. Here's a shout out to all the mechanical engineers in the room. And I can make this introduction. Now once the introductions are made, the business students and the engineering student find they have this common bond, this mutual passion for blank, and that there is a great potential for collaboration. So the business students will then suggest that perhaps the engineering student could come up with some technological solution for them. And the engineering student will ask, well, is there any money in it? Is it a partner they're looking for? Is it a mutual venture, and would there be any great profit to be had? And the business students will reply, well, yes, there will be a lot of profit, but in fact, the engineering student's share of it will be quite small, because it is, after all, their idea, and they're just asking the engineering student for some technical support on it. Well, that's usually the end of the conversation. Now, you can use engineers like that. We solve problems, and not all of us want a piece of the pie. There are many of us who are just interested in a job, not an adventure. But in using an engineer for technical support, you're also missing out on all the benefits of having someone who's very technically savvy on the ground floor. So, as an example, I'm going to look at the private space industry. So I present to you Virgin Galactic. This is a tour company, the premise of which is that tourists pay $200,000 and they're taken on a suborbital flight. Current ticket holders include folks like Ashton Kutcher, I believe Kanye West, and a few other celebrities. And they go on a suborbital flight, and they experience weightlessness to simulate space travel for a while. Now, this is the brainchild of Sir Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin Records, Virgin Airlines, and so forth. Now, he is a very gifted businessman, no distinct technical training, but a gifted businessman. And much of the leadership of Virgin Galactic is also from the business community. Now, I like to see this as an example of exactly how far you can take a technological company on business acumen alone. And it turns out to be exactly 450,000 feet above sea level. So, by contrast, I present another company, a space company, and this is SpaceX, founded by Elon Musk. Now, Elon Musk has training in physics, business, and also applied physics and material science. So he represents both the technological and business community there. And his company also has in its upper echelons of leadership a more even mix between technology and business. Now, their spacecraft, the Dragon, which is actually a fairly bland-looking thing, but very sophisticated inside. It is quite lightweight. It has reduced the price of getting material to orbit. Now, this image here is actually from the Dragon's recent trip to the International Space Station, already in low Earth orbit. It's already quite the success. But it has proven so stable that NASA is currently looking at it for repeated drone trips to Mars. So this is how far a genuine collaboration between business and technologists can take you. Roughly 2 astronomical units. All right, so why do I feel that engineers belong in business? What do they have to contribute? Well, the definition of engineers, as I tell all of my students, is that engineers solve problems. And we do so in an extremely systematic way. Even open-ended problems that you would think can only be solved creatively. So let's say hypothetically that we had identified a need. There was something that had to be done, some problem that needed to be fixed. And what we have here is a representation of all possible solutions to that problem. Now, most of us, it's our intuitive response when given a problem to start brainstorming, to start picking and choosing items in that space, somewhat randomly, perhaps a little bit of insight involved, but there's nothing that guarantees that what we're picking is actually physically possible and certainly not optimal. So how an engineer approaches this very large solution space is we cut it down a few sizes. We apply constraints to it. And the very first constraint we apply are the cold, hard equations of reality. But we're not limited to just mathematical limitations. Constraints can include legal constraints, such as regulation or animal testing, or commercial constraints, such as existing competitors or conditions of the economy. And what we're left with here is no longer this large solution space that we're picking and choosing from, but a small nugget of possibilities here. And we can brainstorm in a much smaller, more defined space here with a reasonable assurance that the things that we create here are actually going to work. But we're not done yet. So engineers will define this small nugget of possibilities with what's called a performance index that will determine how each of these possibilities might be cost-effective to us, which is the most profitable. We'll establish a quantitative evaluation for what would be the best possible business idea. Now this premise, this design methodology, has been applied by many innovators, inventors, industrialists, entrepreneurs in the past. And each of the ones represented here were true visionaries who actually had the technical ability to make their dreams into a reality. Now, were they all rich? Were they all entrepreneurs? No. In fact, I think a couple of them died in bankruptcy. But it does represent what one side of the equation can do. Now that said, I personally believe that engineers do not need businessmen. I also believe that businessmen do not need engineers, even if leading technological companies. But I also think it's not about need. I think it's about potential. What can be done? So it's not about generating wealth. It's not about generating inventions. It's about generating great things. And that's one of the real benefits I feel about the Emerging Talks event that takes place on campus. In this very room, we've got technological experts and we've got business innovators. And it's regardless of what side of the spectrum you find yourself on, this is probably a very good event to make a new friend at. So thank you very much.